Hi there, this is Ronnie, coming at you with a video. Another one for my other tabletop games section of my channel. Like a vast majority of people, I own chess. I have a chessboard. I have a chess set. And drafts, because invariably you get the two of them together these days. And I also own Connect 4. The reason I mention those, they are specifically two-player games, as opposed to the bulk of the games in my collection, which can be played two or more. Some of them can be played one or more, but two or more players. But I wanted to do a video specifically about two-player games. These are games that can only be played by two players. I don't have that many in my collection, to be honest, because I like games that have more and more. So I have put together a video of 5 games that are specifically two-player games. Those games are, in order, Stratego, 32 Dice, Pentago, 13 Days, and Star Realms, which I put at the end because I thought it's a two-player game, it's a card game. Now, I can play chess, but I've gotten to the point of finding it kind of dull. Aficionados of chess, who are fascinated by every facet of the game, will probably find me, a heretic for saying that. But I find it kind of dull, to the point where the first 2 games are really the reason why I don't play chess anymore. To any sort of degree, I haven't played chess in years. Apart from playing, in some have referred to it as kamikaze chess, and some have referred to it as suicide chess. Where the object of the game is to actually get all your pieces got, which is a unique and interesting variant, and actually if I thought about it I would have added it onto this video, but I didn't. So 5 games that are not chess, drafts or Connect 4, but are good alternatives, and as I say, in the case of Stratego and 32 Dice, have pretty much made chess obsolete for me. And whilst I still enjoy playing Connect 4, Pentago is a great alternative. So enjoy. Some of the videos are longer than others, some of the sections are longer than others, simply because 32 Dice doesn't take that much explaining. 13 Days does, and I gave a sort of better overview of Star Realms as well than I did in my review. I filmed these today on my camera on my phone. The camcorder that I use to film my overviews of Vienna and my overviews of Solaris has died on me. I bought it specifically for the purpose of doing exactly what I did, and it's died on me. So my apologies if some of the footage is a little shaky. I don't have the steadiest of hands, and you're kind of holding a phone like that and talking. Ironically, I think the picture quality and the sound quality is better than on the camcorder, so it might be the way I go in future, even if I do get the camera repaired. So I hope you enjoy this little walkthrough of 5 alternatives to chess, drafts, and Connect 4. This is Stratego, and this is a game that has pretty much stopped me from playing chess because I think it's a far better game. But that's an opinion. The object of the game, well, there's 2 objects actually. There's 2 ways to win. The main objective of the game is to capture the opponent's flag, which is one of the pieces represented on the board. You can see the red flag right here. The other way to win is a sort of war of attrition. If you decimate the opponent's pieces to the point where they simply don't have a move to make, there's nothing they can do, they can't make any sort of move, then you've also won. But capturing the flag is the goal, and that's usually how you will win. On your turn, quite simply, you will move one of your pieces. Now, most of the pieces can only move one space. You can see that the board is gridded. They can only move one space, and it's one space forward or backwards, left or right. There's no diagonal movement. Now, I say most. Some of the pieces are special. For example, the flag never moves, the bombs never move. And these guys here, the scouts, they can move any number of empty spaces forward, back, left or right. So they can encroach straight in there into enemy territory. You will notice in the center of the board here, there are 2 waterways here. These are not passable. You can't jump over them, you can't go through them. And this creates these 3 bottleneck areas for moving your troops. Because one of the things about this game is you really can't get away with just running away. If you repeat the same move with the same piece 2 or 3 times, you forfeit the game. So you can't just run. You've got to keep advancing your troops. Or, you can pull back the occasional troop here or there. But if it looks like you're being cowardly in front of the enemy, then you sort of forfeit. So on your turn, you will move. If your move puts you on the same square as your opponent, so let us make a move here. I can move this guy any number of spaces because he's a 2, and I'm going to attack him. What I will say, as the attacker, I will mention the number on my piece, which is a 2. They will then reveal the number of their piece, which is a 7, and whoever has the highest number remains on the board. So in that case, I've lost that piece. But I do now know that that's a 7. So in sacrificing that piece, I've gained a little bit of information. Had it been the other way round, if I'd been the blue player, I would have kept my piece on the board, which is what's happened there. The defender keeps his piece on the board. If I were the attacker and I had a higher number, what's the number here? It's a 2 as well. If I were the attacker with an 8 and a 2, that would move that away and I would take over that piece. If it's the same piece, if they're tied, both leave the field of play. I say that the higher number always wins, but there are exceptions. Just like the movement, there are exceptions. The bombs there that you can see. If you use a 3, a minor, and the miner moves onto a square with a bomb, he deactivates the bomb. The bomb is removed from play. Otherwise, any other piece that moves onto a square with a bomb, they lose that piece. And the bomb remains. It's not one of these games where once a bomb goes off, the bomb gets removed from play. The bomb stays there until it's removed by a miner. So that can decimate your forces quite happily, those bombs. Obviously, the flag doesn't move either. But the interesting one is the spy. This one here, she is a 1. And quite frankly, she's bloody useless. Except the highest placed piece is a 10. Where is my 10? Here he is. Here he is. There's the marshal there. And as a 10, he can pretty much decimate anyone on the board. Even decimate the other marshal at the cost of himself. Obviously, the bombs still take him out. He's not completely omnipotent. But in a nice piece of sort of game symmetry, if the marshal attacks the spy, then the spy is removed from play. Because 10 is higher than 1. But if the spy attacks the marshal, then the spy has found a way through and backstabs the marshal, and the marshal is removed from play. So there's a nice balance where 10 can defeat 9, 9 can defeat 8, 8 can defeat 7, 7 defeats 6, blah, 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 but 1 defeats 10. So there's a nice wrap round to it. What do I think of this game? Well, obviously, I love the game. I did a video many years ago just discussing it, but now I've got the table and everything. I thought I would actually put it on the table, let you see it. I love the game. I think it's gorgeous. It's a simple game. It's easy to teach. It's easy to play. And if you're someone who plays chess or drafts and you're looking for something a little different, Stratego could possibly scratch that itch for you. Yeah, I think you might enjoy it more than maybe you thought you would. So yes, guys, that's Stratego. This is 32 dice. And if Stratego was the game that pretty much put me off chess, this game put the final nail in the coffin for me. Now, the game I got here is a sort of dedicated one made by University Games, but quite frankly, if you have a chess or drafts board and you have 32 dice, you have 16 dice of one colour and you have 16 dice of a different colour, then all you need to do is find the rules online, they're easily available, and you've got 32 dice to play. The object of the game is fairly simple, he says, and that is to get one of your dice to the opponent's back line in such a way that it cannot be taken on the next turn by the opponent. Now, to start the game, you take your 16 down, you will roll them one at a time. The first dice is placed on the bottom left corner, the next dice is placed there, along the row it goes. Then you start the second row from the left over to the right. The person with the most sixes begins the game. If you're tied for sixes, it goes to the fives, if not the fours, the threes, twos, ones. In this particular setup, and I did roll these in advance, we've actually had to go by the number of fours because we're actually equal for the number of sixes and fives. So on your turn, you can do one of two things. You can move a die or you can turn a die. To move a die, you move the die the number of spaces indicated by the die. So here would be a 6, here would be a 3, here would be a 1, and so on. Now you can move a die in any straight line, back, left, right, and diagonal. The only rule being is that it must be able to go the entire length of its number. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this 6 can't go all the way over because this 4 at the other end here is blocking it from going all 6 spaces. This 5, however, can move. And he could easily go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If by going all the spaces that you can, you are able to land on the same square as your opponent's die, then you remove that die from play. You capture it. All pretty simple. The other thing you can do is turn a die. Now to turn a die, you simply take one of the dice that is face up and you turn it onto one of the facing axes here. So with this 6, I could turn it into a 3 or a 2, a 4 or a 5. Given that the 6 can't really do anything, I'm going to turn it into a 5. And that would be the end of my turn. Game continues, as I say, until someone gets a dice onto a die onto the back line, the opponent's back line, in such a way that the opponent can't take it. For example, I can't move this 5 any more forward because there's no 5 spaces to go. I can certainly bring it back 5. That die obviously could take me if it wanted to. And so on and so forth, until someone gets a die to the back line in such a way, for example, if I did have a die, for example, here, I know that's more than 6, but let us assume, then the opponent can take it the next turn. So at that point, it's a loss of a die. But let's say that these dice had those figures on it, and I was there, I would win. The black would win, because neither the 3 nor the 5 can take him because it's only one space away. And I would win. Given that there is a random setup, you have 16 pieces, yes, but they will be almost definitely different every game. And the fact that you can change the values of those pieces means there is an incredible amount of replayability value in this game. And you do have to think a few moves ahead, particularly if you're talking about turning die to get it to just the right value to do what you want to do. Obviously, I love this game. I think it's superb. It's one of those games that I would actually put in the same category as the videos I did recently for Vienna and Solaris, which are games that really deserve a bit more love. I kind of sort of half sarcastically refer to this as a chess variant. It's more accurate to call it a chess alternate, chess alternative. And given the randomized setup with the dice, given the fact that you can change the values of the dice, I actually think it's a better game than chess. I think there's far more replayability in it. I've seen games last seconds. I've seen games last a good 10-15 minutes. I've been on the end of some serious defeats at this game, and I've won a few games quite nicely. So I think it's a winner, and I think it's one that people should play. Now, as I say, I got this one because it was a couple of quid online. But like I said at the start, if you have a chessboard and you have 32 six-sided dice, 16 of one colour, 16 of another, the rules are easy enough to find. Go and play it. This is Pentago. And as a two-player game, I think this is a lovely alternative to Connect 4 and all its variants. Similar themed games to Connect 4 where different titles are available. The object of the game, as slightly suggested by Pentago, is to get a line of 5. That line can be in any straight line, up, down, left, across, diagonally even. But what is unique about this game is the turn. So on your turn, you take a colour. Let's start with white, why not? And you place it on any empty area of the board. Let's place it there. Then you take one of these 4 quarters. You can see the 4 quarters here. You take one of those 4 quarters and you turn them. Take it out and you can turn it either clockwise or anti-clockwise. And then that's your goal. I mean, I could easily have taken that one and put it there if I'd wanted to. And then the opponent will place, and then you will place, and you will keep on going, placing and turning until someone has 5 in a row. Now, that 5 in a row can happen before you turn one of the quarters or after you've turned one of the quarters. So when you're playing, you're constantly looking and watching out for your opponent. A little like with Connect 4, where you're constantly having to watch the columns just in case your opponent's sitting there waiting. With Pentago, you're pretty much always worrying about what the opponent's going to do on their next turn. What do I think of this game? I love it. I really do. As I say, I mean, I do have Connect 4, or a variant of, sort of, made by a different company, but it's the same game. We all know it. And I love this game. I think it's a lovely alternative to playing Connect 4. And because of the turn mechanism, the layout of the game board is forever changing. And because it's forever changing, you're constantly kept on your toes, so that even when your opponent's taking their shot, you're constantly looking. And when you're making your move, you're constantly looking at every possible way your opponent might get in. If in the very rare situation that either at the end of your turn, you've both created a line of 5. You've turned yours to create a line of 5, and you've given a line of 5 to your opponent. Or all the spaces are filled and there are no lines of 5 anywhere, then it's a draw. But, given the permutations, it's very rare. It is essentially, I mean, it's almost noughts and crosses on 4 different, you're playing a sort of noughts and crosses game on 4 boards and trying to link them all. And I think it's great. And it's a bit pricey. I managed to pick this up fairly cheaply, which is why it's looking a little dented. But I still think it's a corker. And if you're looking for something a little different from Connect 4, but still has that same feel, it's worth a punt. This is 13 Days. It's named after the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 60s. And the best way to actually describe this game, in all honesty, is a very, very light version of a venerable old game called Twilight Struggle. The game is very quick. It plays over 3 rounds, and it's a fairly simple game to play, so I'm going to go over the basics of it here. The board there does have a section there which allows you to look at the game and how each round goes. As I say, there are 3 rounds. The round tracker is there. I'll explain that in a second. And the points marker is here. Now, the points marker is very interesting because it is a sliding scale. It starts at 0. And depending on scores, it's a bit of a tug of war, which is, kind of the Cold War in a nutshell. There's also this personal letter. Now, at the start of the game, America has the personal letter, and Russia gets to go first, gets first turn, first round. In subsequent rounds, whoever has the lowest score gets to go first. The personal letter has its uses, and I'll explain that in a second. So the first thing that happens are these DEFCON tracks. Now, this is where you place them at the very start of the game. But the first round, including the first round, these all move up 1 space. Up they go. Ooh, things closer. As you can see, there is DEFCON 3, DEFCON 2, DEFCON 1. The next thing that happens is each player is given 3 agenda cards. Now, because I'm doing this one-handed, I have dealt myself these cards in advance, but the agenda cards, and these agenda cards are looked at by the player and only by the player, and they will show a place to put these little markers. So the American one places 1 here for Atlantic, which is there. 1 on the world opinion track, which is here, right there. And 1 on the political track, which is the one in the center, there. Russia, again, only the Russian player sees these cards. I'm just showing them for the benefit of doing this. We'll place 1 on military. It is possible for 2 people to be on the same track. I'll explain those 3 tracks in a second. 1 in Italy and 1 in Turkey. So, having placed those 3 markers, each player will now choose which of those 3 agendas they are going to go for. So, Atlantic's looking pretty good for America. So, America's going to choose Atlantic. So, they will secretly place that Atlantic card face down under the US agenda. And the other 2 cards are placed face down back on top of the agenda deck. Russia's having a good look, and Russia thinks that they might be able to do well with the military. So it places its hidden agenda there, and the other 2 are hidden face down on top of the agenda deck. So that's that part done. Then we have these strategy cards. Each player will get 5 strategy cards per round. And as I say, the Russian player goes first. So I will show off the Russian cards. And this is good because it lets me explain the game very well. As you can see, the cards come in 3 types. They will either be Russia, or USSR, USA, or NATO. On your turn, you play 1 card. Now you can play the card either, there are 2 parts of the card, influence or an event. Influence is indicated by the cubes at the side here, and the event is indicated by the text underneath. If you are playing a card of your own nation, in this case I'm the Russian player, so Russia, or NATO, representing a sort of neutral in this, you can play either influence or an event. How does that work? Influence means you can play up to that many cubes and either add up to that many cubes in an area or remove up to that many cubes in an area. But there's a price, as I'll explain in a second. So I've decided I'm going to play that. And I'm going to play it for the influence. And in my case, I'm going to play, because I've decided that I'm going to go for military, I'm going to play 2 cubes, all 2, onto here. Now, why have I done that? In fact, I'm going to place them here, just to really mess with them. Why have I done that? If you play only 1 cube, nothing happens. For every cube above 1 that you play, you move that many spaces up the associated track. In this case, the military track. Because I played 2, I move 1 up the military track. And I will then discard that card. If, however, I'm going to play a card of the opponent's nationality, I can only play it for the influence markers. But before I play it, I have to show it to my opponent, and they can decide whether or not they wish to trigger the event first. So in this case, if I play that American card, my opponent would get to look at the event and decide whether or not they want to play the event. After they've decided yes or no and done it, if they've decided to, then I get to use it for the influence and then discard it. Again, with influence, I can add or remove. If I remove influence from an area, and it's always to a single area when using influence cubes. Each area is referred to as a battleground, by the way. And there are events that will allow you to place cubes all over the place. But if I'm removing cubes, then the same thing applies, but in reverse. If I remove 1 cube, nothing happens. For every cube above 1 that I move in a single go, my marker will go down on that particular track. So in this case, if I decided I wanted to remove those 2 cubes from there, my military marker would go down by 1. So each of us would play 4 cards each, taking turn about 1 card, 2, and so on. The final card the one we're left with, is placed face down here under the aftermath. So each of us would place one card there. There's a reason for that. I'll explain it at the end of the round. So after that, we look at the 3 world opinion bonuses. These will give us certain points or certain things. These points are given if you use the world opinion, if you've got the United Nations card for your agenda. But whoever has the most influence cubes here gets to take this personal letter. Now, this personal letter has 2 functions. One, if at the end of the game we're back at 0, there's a tie, whoever owns the personal letter is the winner. However, you can use the personal letter when you're playing a card, a strategy card, with influence. You can use it to add 1 more influence. So if the influence on the card is a 3, as is there, I could use this personal letter to make it a 4. However, in doing so, I forfeit the personal letter and it goes to the opponent. So there's a price to pay for using that personal letter. Here you can either move one of your tokens either up or down 1 on the def contracts. And here you get an extra aftermath card. I'll explain that when I explain the aftermath. Then we check our bonuses, the resolve agendas. Now the agenda, the Atlantic, well, I moved those away, so I don't get anything. So I don't get anything. That's a shame. And where is this one? Military. Well, I do have... Oh, yeah. They don't get any for there. Military. Escalate all the DEFCON marchers in the military DEFCON 2 area by 1 step. Luckily, none of them are in the DEFCON 2 area. And I receive prestige equal to the difference in DEFCON steps plus 1. So I have a difference of 1 plus 1, so I would get 2 points to Russia. So, you know, Russia would get some. If America had succeeded in getting more cubes on the Atlantic, I wouldn't have gotten as far as 2. I may have been able to bring it down further to 0. Once those are resolved, they go face up. They will not come back into play. The other ones may, because the agenda deck at the start of the next round will be shuffled and 3 new agendas. So you might get the same pick of agendas that you did last round, except for the cards you've actually played. Game continues like that for 3 rounds. Yes, so after resolving agendas, check for nuclear war. Sorry about this, slightly haphazard. Check for nuclear war. If any one of your markers is in DEFCON 1, or all 3 of your markers are in DEFCON 2, you lose the game. And it is possible for both players to lose the game at that point. And once that's done, round marker goes up, and we do it all over again. After 3 rounds, we check the aftermath. Now there will be at least 6 cards in there. There may very well be more due to this, which will allow you an extra aftermath card. So there may be as many as 9. And we check the aftermaths. We remove any NATO cards that have been placed there. And we simply look at the number of Russian cards versus the number of American cards that have been placed. And whoever has the most cubes in total gets 2 points. Doesn't matter by how many you've got, 2 points. In this case, just as a quick example, no one's getting anything because no one's got an advantage. And at the end of the day, whoever has the most prestige is the winner. In case of a tie, whoever has the personal letter is the winner. That's a very rough, quick overview of the game. What do I think of the game? I love it. It's a very simple game. It plays very quickly. The box says 45 minutes. I think that's about fair. I think it can go to an hour with new players, or players who really do sometimes suffer from analysis paralysis. But it is a stormingly good game, if I do say so myself. I think if you're looking for something as a two-player game that's very quick, very easy to play, and it is easy, there's a lot of deliberation with what card to use and how to use it, but there's no complex rules regarding them. And if you're put off by Twilight Struggle and it looks a little daunting, try this one. I think you might like it. This is Star Realms, which again is a game I have mentioned before in a video, but as we're doing a video on specifically two-player games, I thought I'd mention this one. Now, yes, I am aware that Star Realms, this is the original base game. There is a standalone expansion called Colony Wars. I do own it. And there's the Star Realms Frontiers game, which was released last year before. Anyway, it allows for 2 to 4 players. But this original game and Colony Wars on its own are 2-player only. So you can add another deck and then you can play more players. But on its own, 1 deck for 2 players. So what is Star Realms about? Star Realms is space combat. Pure and simple. You start with 50 health, referred to in this game as authority. And the idea is to knock the other guy down to 0. Just get your opponent down to 0. Standard card game. Where this card differs is because it's a deck builder. And because of that, you don't have the problem, what I consider to be the main problem with games like Magic and their ilk, in the fact that if you happen to have enough money and you buy all the expansions and all the cards, and you can then sit and you can create your perfect super killer deck. And yeah, I've never been a big fan of that. Whereas with Star Realms, you start with the same 10 cards each. And any card that you're going to use comes off of this trade roll in the centre. So how's the game played? On your turn, you will have a deck of cards you can see here. Now again, because I'm using one hand, I'm having to do my own deck myself. Now, usually you will draw 5 cards from your deck, but the first player's first turn, they only draw 3 cards. So in this case, I have 2 scouts and a viper. Scouts give you trade. They give you money to use to buy cards from the trade roll. Vipers inflict damage to your opponent. So let's look at the trade roll and we will see the cards that are there. Now I've picked specifically cards here to help me explain some of the concepts of the game. So there are 4 factions. There are the Machine City, which are red. You've got the Trade Federation in blue. You've got the Star Empire in yellow. And you've got the Blob, who are green. Now, each card will have what they call a primary ability. not all actually, but the majority, will have what's called a primary ability. The petrol mech, you can either use it, when you play it, you can either give it 3 coins or do 5 damage. The cutter here, the green there gives you authority back, that's health back. So it gives you 4 health back, 4 authority back, and gives you 2 coins. The coin value at the top right of the card is how much that card is to buy. These two are bases, and you will see that they have, I'll turn this around for ease. They have a shield down at the bottom right. A grey shield means that the opponent can ignore that base when dealing damage to you. Whereas if you have a black base, this is an outpost. And if you have a black shield, it must be destroyed before you can do damage. Now, damage is not cumulative. And what I mean by that is you can't hit this base here for 2 damage in one turn and then hit it for another 2 damage and destroy it. You either hit it for 4 and destroy it, or you don't destroy it, and next turn you would have, if you haven't destroyed it, you've got to hit it with 4 again. These again have primary abilities. In the case of the blob wheel, it does 1 damage. In the case of the war world, it does 3 damage. But you'll also notice that a lot of them have a little thing here. These are faction bonuses. If you play 2 or more cards of the same faction, then you get that faction bonus. So for example, if I played another red that round, I'd be able to trigger that faction bonus, which is scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. Here, if I play another trade federation, this card not only gives me all of that, it also deals 4 damage. Blobs are just nasty as all get out, and they do an insane amount of damage. And if you happen to play 2 blobs, and that can include bases, may I add, and when you finish playing all your cards and you place them to your discard pile, if you have bases, they remain out until they're destroyed. When you destroy a base, it goes to your discard pile. But there's one more thing here, which is this thing here, which is this little bin here, and that's a trash bonus. You can trash this card, permanently remove it from play, and get that bonus. If I were to trash this blob wheel, I would lose it forever, but I would get 3 gold. Just to say that you will see cards like that one, and obviously the petrol mech as well, that says that you may destroy target base and or scrap a card in the trade roll, or scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. If you're scrapping a card with that method, you do not get the scrap bonus. You only get that bonus if it has a scrap bonus and you scrap it itself, not from the ability of another card. Once a card is bought, and for the basic benefits of this, let me show. I have 2, so I'll buy that cutter. It goes to my discard pile. That's my turnover. I would do 1 damage to my opponent, and I would deal 5 more cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You begin the game with 8 scouts and 2 vipers. So back here, a new card has to come out. It's an Imperial frigate. That's quite a good card, actually. And I have 5 scouts. Now I'm intrigued because that Imperial frigate's good. Because not only, it's got all the targets here, it gives you a primary ability of doing 4 damage and target opponent must discard a card from their hand. It gives you a faction ability of an extra 2 damage, and you can always scrap it permanently if you wanted to in order to draw a card. But that War World's not bad either. So essentially I would be buying whatever I buy. In fact, I will buy that frigate. And that's played rather nicely. I will take that missile bot. That's me used all my 5. And turn would go about, but if you get to the point where, and I will just use this as an example. I'll use this as an example. I now have only 2 cards in my deck. So I would take those 2. I then get my discard pile, shuffle it, turn it upside down, and pick back up to 5. The first player, as I say, their first round, they only pick 3 cards. After that, they pick 5 cards like everyone else. So I would shuffle it, place it down. That's my new deck. So as you're buying cards, they're coming into your deck. Hence a deck builder. Game continues until one opponent has been reduced to 0, and then, their opponent is the winner. What do I think about this game? Well, the fact that I have 2 copies of Star Realms, 2 copies of Colony Wars, and some of the expansions, I have the Star Realms big box for that, but I like to have copies of both Colony Wars and Star Realms just for little 2-player games. Rather tells you everything you need to know about what I think of Star Realms. I love it. I've been on record, and I've done a video on this. I don't like deck builders. The majority of deck builders I played were very dry. I found them, to be honest, pretty dull. The first deck builder that really grabbed my attention was Clank. But then I played Star Realms and the fog lifted, and I love it. As I said during this video, the thing that's finally put me off Magic and so on is the chase for cards. But because this all comes from one deck only, means that even if you have bought some of the expansions, they all go into that deck. So you have a chance of getting those cards if they come out during the game, but so does your opponent. So it's a great leveler. And just one other thing, if you absolutely don't have anything to buy, you can always buy these Explorers. They cost you 2, they give you 2 money, and you can scrap them for 2 damage. And that's the other thing. You can do everything. To go back to the blob wheel, I can hit you for 1 damage and then scrap it for 3 coins. You can do it all, which I like. Overall, if you're looking for a fun, very easy to play, it's very easy to teach, 2-player game, if you're sort of put off by Magic because of a certain complexity, because the game, there's just so many expansions and so many this and so many that, that's kind of put you off those kinds of games, give this one a go. It's relatively cheap as well. You can pick it up for 13, 14 quid in your local game store. And that might sound a lot for a card game, but the quality of the artwork is there. It's a fantastic game, and you will get so much replayability out of it. So that's Star Realms, folks.